Please proceed with caution. The object on the screen is not closer than it appears, but it is closer than usual. Thank you. Hi, here we are again. Sarah's handbook was not originally intended to be a two-part. I decided, you know what, you forgot some stuff, and also you're going to want to talk about the comments and all that. So I was like, part two. And here we are in part two. It turns out I don't really have that much of a part two, but I have just as much of a part two as I did a part one. So there you go. I'm also going to try something with this video where I'm just going to keep talking and not worry about, not making any sense or trailing off to another subject. And because we all like long videos, and that's how I'm going to do it. We'll see how it goes. Every time I, every time I make a Sarah Boone video, there's at least one comment that says, please never stop talking about Sarah Boone. And I always respond, and I'm telling you now, I'm never going to stop talking about Sarah Boone. So I couldn't if I wanted to. And I guess we all feel that way because here we are. And I've often thought about what it is about this case that um, has us in such a chokehold. In part, it's not that I don't find other cases interesting. I do, but they don't prompt as much thought and conversation as Sarah Boone does. And I think in part it's because of her and how, as I always say, impossible to figure out, yet so stupid and simple. It's the combination in itself is confounding. But it's also because Sarah provided us with so much content, so much of a peek or a good look around, actually, a whole house tour of the way she thinks and the way she operates in the world and in the courtroom and in relationships, that there's a lot to talk about. And even the things that even her less ridiculous things are worth a think. So we had, of course, I'm assuming let's say we all saw the interrogation first. That alone was a lot. That alone was not enough to draw me in. As I've said before, I just figured, this is a Florida woman does blah, blah, blah. That first I saw the headline. I didn't pay any attention to it. Then I saw the interrogation. I was like, wow. But after that, I didn't think about it that much. I remembered it and I thought it was crazy, but it was almost too crazy to think about. And I have had cases where, for example, the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case and trials, when Chad Daybell's trial in particular was over, I guess that must have been the last one, which is why I felt this way. I was not done talking about it, and I wanted there to be more coverage, more discussions. Um, we knew about the case, we had seen the trial, we had heard from the jurors, and it was over. So after a week or two, I was able to just move along. With Sarah, however, we didn't just have the case and the trial, we had the interrogation. We had some other body cams, I believe was next. And everything I'm listing here is completely crazy and just nutso. So I'm not just listing up, as all of you know, I'm not just listing a bunch of stuff. Interrogation, various body cam, letters to the court, hearings in the courtroom regarding her various appointed attorneys, etc. Being forced to be pro se, not by choice. Owens. Letters throughout up until Owens, there were letters. Trial. The jurors never spoke. So there we were, stranded at the drive-in, feeling like a fool. And then there was more. There was something. Oh, right. Oh my God, how could I forget? What is it? What was the thing I was going to say that? Oh, yes, her elocution, her scorched earth, didn't think it was possible, shocked us by how evil she really is. Elocution. After that, I mean, then she was sentenced, and then I could finally. That was the first time I really could see even. I would say a light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't mean that. Okay, I'll be done with this soon because I already. Well, I don't know if I knew yet, but I've come to realize, and I wouldn't have been surprised to think I might never be done talking about this. But that's when at least we had justice was served, so we could unclench for a second and watch the Lori Vallow make an idiot out of herself. She gave a little more in the second one, but by then I was done with her. Because she went pro se and all that. Lori Vallow is much smarter than Sarah Boone. This probably goes without saying, but I just feel the need to say it anyway. Then we had, of course, Family Court. Letters to Family Court we'd already seen for the most part. And we'd also seen, now we've seen her jail texts, her behavior write-ups, all of those things. So we've seen that, her writings with her brother and Lana and her child, and all the letters she tried to send to Helen and Keller that for some reason were returned to sender. But R was backwards. That's how you know that they wrote that, return to sender. And then we had the Family Court, which, I mean, and the letter that we just got. That's not even, I haven't even, I mean, the letter is, it's actually some of her, not least stupid, very, very stupid, very bad for her. I mean, not, much like her allocution, it will achieve the opposite desired effect. But we had no doubt there. And so here we are, you know, and I think that is part of the reason that, along with her bizarre, hateful personality, that we are still here and still engaged. I also believe that Sarah Boone is more of a discussion than just Sarah Boone and just her crime and her behaviors. Sarah Boone is a discussion about cruelty, it's about evil in a place you might not think you would find it. You know, I mean, there are plenty of drunk, neglectful mothers out there. Actually, no, maybe you would think you'd find it there now that I put it that way. But that kind of malignant, toxic to the core, I don't see a lot, and certainly not the combination of I excel at everything. The whole combination there is she's just proof that there are real people in the world who will sneak into your life like a thief in the night and steal yourself from yourself. Unlike Big Daddy Kane, who will sneak into your life like a thief in the night, lick your body all over and squeeze you real tight. Nibble all over your neck, give it back a massage, and say, "Ooh, I like it just like the box."
Sneak into your life like a thief in the night. Lick your body all over and squeeze you real tight. Nibble all over your ear and give your back a massage. You'll say, "Ooh, I like it just like the boss."
Sarah has done what Sarah does. She overwhelms, as George said. She provides a forced deluge of assaults from all directions. She sat on her lazy ass in the Big Bay, orchestrating whatever attacks she could. She used a third party, not when she just had to, but when possible, because very, very lazy. As we came to find out, but we're not surprised by, she was currentistically assaulting her son, assaulting her brother, assaulting her friends. No one is safe. Sarah attacked who she was left with, one of whom she had already killed. The only people who loved her. Let's further explore the handbook, or what I call Sarah's Wranglings, or It's Not Fair for Dummies. Her attempts at manipulative practices. Sarah does something that's like a manufactured, established history. I know, and everybody knows, that had I known to be prepared, I would be prepared. She does this a few times, different at different times, letting you know that it's not just me, because she can say I would be prepared, but why would anyone believe that? So Sarah states, and as we've said many times, for Sarah, saying something out loud makes it so. I know, and everybody knows, which is her way of saying everybody here knows. Maybe you don't, Judge Cranick, or you don't, Detective Copsel, or you don't, whatever, fill in the blank. But I know, and everybody else knows, that I would have done the right thing. Had I been prepared, no fault of my own. This, to the occasional uninitiated casual listener who's not very invested and not much of a cynic, this might work, because it's, you don't really I mean, this is obviously just my opinion, but you don't, by the time I heard Sarah say this, yeah, maybe it wouldn't work actually, because it sounds strange from, but it's possible that it would work to a degree, the same way as I'm a straight A student, or because it's so out there that you don't think someone would lie that far, that go that far for a lie, that it would be so untrue, and it's so audacious that it's like part of you kind of files it away as might be a partial truth. It's also a way of almost shaming the listener, like everybody else knows this but you're the only person who misunderstands me here, Judge Cranick, who I wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of letters to, and now I'm saying that you never listened to me, you never asked me questions, you never let me explain. What I don't understand about Sarah is how she doesn't understand that she can't explain. That is her problem. When she has to explain something, she actually starts to stutter. There are times when she will just make a sound come out of her mouth, so that she's not sitting there in silence, so that she doesn't have no answer. I didn't know me and George, for example. On the stand, she says this. Nobody asked her to repeat herself or ask her what she means, because what's the point? There is no point. She's so busted, but somehow the only person who doesn't see how busted she is her. I think that she could get up from the stand and think, this looks bad, guys. But by the time she gets to her seat behind her desk, she's convinced herself that she's winning. I looked into what they call magical thinking, which is a common trait with OCD, but it seems, from what I understand, and if anyone has more information about this than I do, which might be all of you, let me know, please. And because I've heard it used before in different ways, and I thought it might be magical thinking, meaning, kind of like the way Sarah does, where she keeps putting her trial off and just thinking something will, eventually something will happen, and this will just all stop. But from what I understand, it's more of superstitious behaviors. If I do this 3 times, something bad won't happen, or kind of thinking that, not delusion, but thinking that your thoughts can change an outcome. Because she has a little bit of that kind of thing, but I don't know exactly. I looked up magical thinking, and it's not what I thought it was. So it doesn't mean what I think it means. I don't think. Sarah's claims of superiority and accomplishments are the delusions of a crazy person, but she's not really a crazy person in the way that we would think, or I would certainly think of a delusional crazy person. I equate that more with somebody who's actually talking to themselves, screaming, unwashed, living on the street kind of thing, or living in an institution, someone who can't be on their own. As the NYPD calls them, EDPs, emotionally disturbed persons. Another reason that I know and everybody knows sounds strange is that most people don't speak for everyone. It's also an example of how thinly veiled Sarah's objectives are. I know and everybody knows, so I've already established that. Don't question it. And then she goes on to say something that could not be furthest from the truth, because Sarah knows damn well what's supposed to happen, or should, certainly. It's like her saying that the reason she was having such a hard time with her case law during the family court trial hearing slash trial slash hearing is that she was on the phone. It's very difficult on the phone with a limited. That would have been an I know and everybody knows moment. And I'm almost surprised that it wasn't. It is similar, but not identical to her ask anyone situation, where during the body cams we see her tell the officers, ask anyone. I'm asking you. Ask the neighbors. And then it's not anyone. Not anyone. Ask the following list of approved people. Property manager, neighbors, who turns out she misjudged that one. Parole officer, I guess. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. Because she had a selection of people who she felt she was cashing in on her work, which was feeding them a bunch of lies to create the scenario that she wanted to create as the battered partner. Melissa was the property manager was a very good target for that, because she had her own experiences like that. And she had a little bit of I don't want to call it a hero complex, but she wanted to help her. She didn't see it the other way. Who knows? Maybe Melissa was a little bit of a racist herself. We don't know. But either way, she asked anybody. She is establishing her truth with witnesses and history and what to her thinks will seem like valid evidence and proof. Don't ask the maintenance worker guy. Don't ask George's family, obviously. Don't ask his coworkers or boss. Don't ask any of our neighbors who knew George before this, obviously. And just don't ask the neighbors, because a couple of them I made claims against that they were sexually harassing me. It's just better if we don't just these two guys next door and Pearl Walker, who Sarah wouldn't even think of, because Sarah didn't think about Pearl Walker. Anyone who had had enough raw exposure to Sarah, she did not invest time or effort into. But those who were uninitiated, didn't know George well, didn't know her at all, or didn't know either one of them at all, those are the ones that she laid down her groundwork with. And those are the ones that she would tell authorities to ask. My guess is that Kim may have made that list because, and something else interesting happens with what she says about Kim, but had Detective Lowen not mentioned to her that everyone in the building told him that she's drunk all the time, and which also Sarah did not see that one coming. I don't know if that's that uncommon, that some people who drink a lot and are visibly drunk a lot, if they know that, I don't know. I thought they did, but I don't know every drunkard in the world. So I think that had Detective Lowen not mentioned Kim, and that she wouldn't let her use the bathroom, I'm not sure if she would have said that Kim was just automatically not nice. I mean, look, she seems to have liked Eli just fine, but she could not wait. Well, I wouldn't say she couldn't wait, but she certainly did not wait to throw him right under the bus, I guess, in hopes that they would just get up and go arrest him and forget all about her nonsense. Didn't happen, obviously. But what she says about Kim that I find interesting is she's automatically not a nice person, even after I went over there and introduced my son. Now, an invested mother, a mother who sees their child all the time and is involved with her child in earnest. I don't see, first of all, you really would not have to bring your son over to introduce him because inevitably they would see you together and you could introduce him then. But Sarah can only maybe string together a couple of overnights before Brian has to come pick her son up. Brian. And someplace in Sarah's mind, she knows this because she uses her son in a way that only a mother who really is not around their child that much would have to, and not because, not, and by choice. Even after I introduced her to my son, she wasn't nice. Now, why should that make her nice? Not everyone likes children. Also, we don't know how Kim acted, and it doesn't matter. This is about Sarah's behavior, as always. Why would she think that she would just not be nice even after that? And who knows if that's even true, if she was just in a desperate moment kind of spinning a yarn about how nasty, how automatically not nice Kim is. But the fact that she would even mention that she introduced her to her child and she was still not nice. Because Sarah, and I would not be surprised if she did introduce her, just like she did the officers. You know, Sarah wants to make a good impression. She drags out that poor child because she feels that just doing that makes everyone think, what a mom, what a mom, what an involved mom. She introduced me to her child. Yeah, I haven't seen him around here since. That was about 3 months ago. The truth is, of course, and I believe that that behavior shows me that there is, and I do think there's a part of Sarah that knows the truth about herself more than we do, even, which makes it even more, well, I don't know. I don't know at what stage she starts to delude herself, and I don't know what form it takes. But Sarah knows, in my opinion, deep down, or maybe not so deep down, I don't know, that she's the kind of mother whose child would have been taken away already had she not had another parent to take care of that child. And I've said this before, or I said it once before, but Sarah is locked up with women who are away from their children, who children might be going through the foster system, whose children might be with their drunk mother, whose children might be with their worse husband, ex-husband, whatever it is. And Sarah is carrying on and complaining about this man who is taking better care of their child than many, many, many parents, and some decent parents. I mean, some people believe in hands off parenting, but they are still parents. Not once does Sarah think, and I've said this long before we saw any of her texts to Brian or any of that because it's Sarah. Not once does Sarah think, I'm so lucky to have someone take me. I can't even imagine how I would feel or what would happen if I did not have Brian taking care of my son. She never has to worry. That child is provided for and loved in every way. Sarah, of course, does not care about that, which shows us how little she cares about her son. It's not surprising because that she cares about her son really the way she cares about everyone, which is not at all, which says something because that is her son. It's just another tool of control for her. She just wants to weaponize him and weaponize herself as the mother. I like to think that some of the women in that prison with her hear her nonsense and don't like it so much. And if I had to guess, I would say that I don't think the visits are going to last very long because once a month can really creep up on you, especially when it's going to see Sarah and driving for an hour and a half, both ways. 3 hours of driving just to. I would rather drive for an hour and a half to the dentist and back. One of the other reasons that I think Sarah is somewhere aware of the truth, what she really is because in many ways, and we've said this before, this is nothing new, of course, she addresses the truth with her lies. I know, and everybody knows that I would have been prepared. I'm an outstanding mother to my son, all of those things, all the things that George forced her to do. I mean, now we know the things that she did, and that George didn't force her to do them, obviously, but we wouldn't have known any of that had she not offered it up in her allocution. Even her immediate claim in the interrogation, I didn't lay a hand on him. Unprompted, really, I might add. She had not been accused of anything. This was a confusing crossroads for Sarah because Sarah did not expect, she didn't think of every single scenario or really even one, except for that she could just ramble off what she wanted to and then break the fuck out. Sarah did not realize that well, I mean, I believe she was told that they wanted to discuss the autopsy, but somehow Sarah was convinced that, the doctor wouldn't, the medical examiner would be like, it looks good. He looks good. He looks Puerto Rican, violent, but he's fine. Maybe he choked on one of his teeth. I don't know. Who cares? So now, when Sarah was confronted with the fact that there was an autopsy done carefully and that the medical examiner found that he was covered in bruises from what looked like it could only be a brutal assault, Sarah was very taken by surprise by this, and she came up with, I didn't lay a hand on him. Now, Sarah knows that she's had spent the night in question, and my guess would be many, many nights, physically assaulting George. So that's the last thing she's going to admit to. What Sarah forgot in that moment is that she is the victim. She didn't think she was going to have to twist his, I don't know why, because it happened before and she certainly never forgot it when she was arrested. She was going to have to twist this whole narrative around and set it on its head so that she could figure out how to be the victim here. Because once again, she had that established false history. She had called 911 many, many, many times and given them many very unconvincing, very drunk, false accounts of what happened. She knows and everybody knows. Just ask the deputy and ask the sheriff and ask them. That's why she wanted to talk. Why? How come Henry gets to talk to him? That's why she wanted to talk to everyone immediately, including at the main crime scene. I wonder, can I talk to the property manager and tell them what happened? I mean, it was on her mind then because she thought that she was going to go back there and live her life in her townhome. She didn't want, she wanted to get her story in there so that when she came back, it wouldn't be awkward. Clearly not having read the fine print on her lease that said killers not allowed. So Sarah really screwed herself with this. Nothing would have helped with this. I mean, you can't. What Sarah didn't know is that nothing would have helped her except for some remorse and the truth. At least some remorse. Or brain. I mean, maybe someone smarter could come. I mean, you can't come up with something more stupid. But Sarah was taken aback by this because stupid and so convinced in a weird way of her own nonsense. She had already established, I mean, she had invested a few years now establishing this narrative of her as the abusee. When she found out that he had injuries, I didn't lay a hand on him. And it occurred to me when I was thinking about this and writing this that at first I thought, well, I'm almost surprised that she didn't, when they said he had bruises here and here and here, that she didn't say he didn't lay a hand on me. Which is no less crazy or stupid. It might even be a little bit better because it's not, at least she would be, I mean, it's completely ridiculous, obviously, but at least she would be defending him, not herself. Not defensive in that way, but just he didn't lay a hand on me. That also would have been easier to spin later when she was coming up with a defense, I think. Couldn't be worse. She got herself into the worst possible scenario and situation there from beginning to end, obviously. But she didn't do that. She just said, I didn't lay a hand on him. It was a good day. Kept asking them, so when are we going to know what the cause of death was? I mean, I think they kind of implied that they know, right? They told him, well, they want to, she's going to keep him for a while. And so are you saying that I did all of that? Sarah also does not like to finish certain sentences that are kind of unpleasant, and she'd rather not deal with them. I also think that she changed that I didn't lay a hand on him to nobody touched anybody, because she realized that let's make an even playing field here, because he's the real abuser here. So no reason for me to be defensive. Some part of her knew or thought that it would be better to cleave between those two and make them even. Neither one of us, like, I'm not defensive, but he didn't touch me either. I mean, we were just having a good day, not no one touched anybody. Like, everything was good. The other day we touched upon Sarah's third parties. And I started to reflect upon the fact that there's no possible way to maintain a successful or pleasant or any relationship with Sarah, because she's impossible to please in every way for the long term. There's no, Sarah runs a very tight ship, and she may be lazy and a liar and disgusting and a murderer and neglectful parent and just horrible in every way. But she will not stand for that kind of nonsense on her watch. When she gets angry, which is, as I say, inevitable, she lashes out with such a nasty assault. She immediately starts shaming, feeling sorry for you, pathetic, using anything she can against you, no matter what it is. We saw it in her text to George. We saw it in her email to Lana. We've certainly seen it in her many texts to her husband, former husband, and her son. And it occurred to me that not only because of how Lana was friends with Tanika at the time of her death, and how she had also kind of been starting to become one of us. We had chats with her and interactions with her, and she was welcomed by most of us, not all of us, which is fine. Everyone is entitled to their feelings. But we provided somewhat of a, we weren't like, oh my God, like, we didn't make her persona non grata. Now, in part, it's true that Alana was very ill. And I would say that certainly for me, that made me feel a little bit differently about it, because I cannot assume that I know what an experience that I've never had is like. And I do have sympathy for terminally ill people. And Lana also did not strike me as a bad person. So I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about some of the other flying monkeys, as they're called. And even James Owens, who nobody was fond of and really still isn't, even he, many of us feel sorry for now. And that's saying something. So our group, our community, and we've said it many times, and I've said it many times, we are a very warm and kind group of people, in my opinion. I'm not even going to pull myself into that. I know from the way that I am treated by all of you people, that you're kind, you're patient, you're accepting, non-judgmental. And it really is like a safe place The world is kind of crazy now, and crazier, and it kind of creates a soft place to land, which I love, and I would hope I provide for you as well. And I think about Sarah's Flying Monkeys and how Lana, for example, was really welcomed into our group. Now, this is not a standing open invitation, just to clarify. But what it made me reflect on is how powerful and important kindness is, and how it doesn't mean you have to be a pushover or a sucker or an idiot. And you don't always have to be kind, obviously. I mean, at all. You don't even have to give people the benefit of you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But it really is a better place to be as long as you are around people who are the same way. There is nothing better than that. And Sarah's Flying Monkeys, who, one of them sent Tanika a cease and desist letter and all that, they lash out also. Not Sarah Boone style, because not everyone has all that in them, but nasty, nasty. And when we talk about them, yes, we will say things that might not be super nice sometimes, but the overarching feeling is of sympathy, I think, or I mean, of course, curiosity. But it's kind of really just, why would anyone want to invite that into their lives? Why would they want to be friends with her? Because we know what she's capable of, and we have seen all of her dumpster fire relationships that could have been perfectly fine. I mean, with perfectly nice people. Sarah's brother seems like a very nice guy. Brian, her son, Lana. I mean, these are people that really almost anyone could get along with when you think about it, which is crazy. Not Sarah. On the contrary. Just the fact that somebody would allow themselves to be used that way makes them a somewhat, I don't want to say pathetic, I will say sympathetic character. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but there is something pathetic about the whole situation. And as I said about James Owens, who none of us were a fan of, even that at the end was hard to look at. And, obviously George Torres was the victim that lost his life. But he was far from her only victim. And I would say that, and I have said it before, that anyone who has any exposure to Sarah Boone becomes her victim. Nobody escaped Sarah Boone unharmed. Nobody. Not George Torres, not the Torres family, not her property manager, not her neighbors, not Pearl Walker, not Helen or Keller. Nobody. Because even if you show Sarah kindness and understanding and patience, as Brian has, I mean, her son is her child, so that you can't even use that comparison, as Lana did, as George did, and I'm sure as the Torres family did. Property manager did. It's not enough, because it has nothing to do with them. This is all about Sarah. And Sarah fucks everything up because Sarah's horrible. And when people start seeing that, she has to blame anyone but herself. And she does that with her false established histories, proving herself right and the accuser only wrong. Everyone knows, but you don't know for some reason. Why can't I get my discovery? Why can't I couldn't, I only got through one of them. I know, and everybody knows, that I would have been prepared. He's making it seem like my, in quotes, drinking problem. Sarah was just trying to keep her son safe, that's all. Because she is a good mother. She would never put her child in harm's way. Thank you for watching. I will see you very soon.